So everyone, you might have noticed by the thumbnail that the release of iOS 17 and iPadOS 17, whenever that happens in September, could be a day of mourning instead of a day of excitement, because product champions that really kind of set the way and paved the way for things like iPad Pro, like this 2018 iPad Pro, will be losing support with iOS and iPadOS 17, as well as some other very popular iOS and iPadOS devices. So in this video, I want to talk about all the different devices that are losing support to let you guys know that, hey, it might be time to upgrade those older devices, but then also talk about what to expect with iOS 17, when it should release, and some other kind of inklings that we're seeing with iOS and iPadOS 17 that you should take note of. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's get started with the devices that are going to lose support, because Apple is supposed to be releasing, or at least announcing at WWDC 2023, the release of iOS 17, iPadOS 17, and all the other corresponding updates to their software like macOS and tvOS and watchOS. But the ones we're going to focus on now is iOS and iPadOS 17. And according to a rumor that we saw on Twitter, unfortunately, some of Apple's most popular devices of recent years is going to start to finally lose software update support. So if you own an iPhone 8, an 8 Plus, that beloved iPhone 10 that really changed the game, as well as the 5th gen iPad, the 9.7 iPad Pro, and then also the 11-inch and the 12.9-inch 2018 iPad Pro, which really changed the game from a design language and from a power and performance to actual size and design ratio. That 2018 iPad Pro completely changed the game for a lot of people and made Apple and consumers realize that what Apple was doing with their Bionic chips, with their A-series chips, was really changing the game from a performance standpoint, especially on the pricing side as well. Because those A-series chips were what built the M-series chips in the new laptops, and that completely changed the game from a computing power standpoint and a price standpoint in Apple's laptops. So this 2018 iPad Pro losing iPadOS 17 support is going to be a gut-wrencher for me personally, because I still have a 2018 11-inch iPad Pro that we use as a daily kind of iPad to throw around the house, and it still runs the latest software, it still runs Stage Manager, it only has 4 gigs of RAM, and pretty much everything that I throw at it, I mean, I'm not video editing, I'm not doing anything too crazy with this 2018 11-inch iPad Pro, but overall, this thing handles everything that we throw at it like an absolute champ, and you have that 120Hz ProMotion display, so seeing this lose iPadOS 17 support is kind of, it's a sad, sad day for me especially. But I did want to let everybody know that if you have those iPhones and those iPads, you most likely will not be getting iPadOS or iOS 17. You'll still have one more year of security updates with iOS and iPadOS 16, so if you are okay with that, then you should be fine for another year. But if you want to get whatever Apple releases during WWDC with iOS and iPadOS 17, unfortunately, you're going to have to get a new iDevice, like a new iPhone or a new iPad. Now again, these are just rumors that we saw online from a credible source, but there will always be some conflicting reports, but we're also pretty certain because last year with the release of iOS 16 and iPadOS 16, Apple did drop a decent amount of hardware devices that they supported. For example, they dropped the 6S and 6S Plus support, 7 and 7 Plus, the first gen iPhone SE, and even the beloved iPod Touch lost iOS support last year for iOS 16. So I just want to let everybody know that these are rumors and it's not 100% set in stone. We will find out more as the days progress, but we wouldn't be surprised if what I mentioned earlier is true and that these older iPhones and older iPads will lose support for iOS and iPadOS 17 moving forward. So now, if you're somebody that kind of refuses to update to the latest version of iOS, whether it's because of battery life or you don't want anything new or things like that, or maybe you have an older device, there's another thing that you should keep in mind when you think about updating to a newer version of iOS. So if you're on iOS 11 or older, that means that you will be losing all of Apple's services except for iCloud. So if you use Apple Music or Apple Arcade or Apple TV or the Fitness app or Apple News, then unfortunately, if you keep using iOS 11, Apple, they will warn you on your device, but Apple will stop support for all of those devices. The only thing that you'll be able to still use is iCloud, which means iMessage will still be around. But outside of that, if you're somebody that's kind of in the Apple ecosystem, but you're still on iOS 11, macOS High Sierra, watchOS 4, or tvOS 11, then unfortunately you're going to lose all of those services pretty much overnight. So if you do want to update, I do recommend updating now, even if it will slow down your device a little bit, or maybe it'll hurt battery life, because then you won't have an issue with actually losing any of those Apple services. So now let's quickly talk about when to expect the release of iOS and iPadOS 17. So Apple normally announces their new software updates and talks about all the features and everything new to expect and everything that Apple's working on during WWDC. So on June 5th, expect to actually see everything that Apple has been working on. And then normally, if you are a developer in Apple's program, in their developer program, that you will get access, normally, unless it was a pandemic year, normally you get access to that beta, to the first beta of iOS 17 or iPadOS 17 that same day or that same evening. And they've been doing that pretty much every single year, except for iOS 14 because there was delays with the pandemic. And then the public beta does release usually about a month after. So last year, July 11th, we actually got iOS 16 for the public developer program. So if you do want to test out the public beta program, you can do that for free. If you want to use a developer program, I'll leave a link down below to register for it, but that is $100 a year to be part of that program. And then lastly, the September timeframe is when we should expect iOS 17, so think mid-September, and it usually comes and coincides with Apple's actual release of their newest iPhone. So whenever the new iPhone 15 releases, or whenever the new iPhone 15 is announced, that is usually when we get the latest update to iOS 17, because then those iPhones will come pre-installed with iOS 17. Same thing with the iPads, they should come pre-installed with iPadOS 17 when it does release. And then the last thing I do want to mention is that with the update of iOS 17, the beginning of this year and a little bit of last year, everybody was saying that they put all their R&D money and focus into their AR VR goggles or their headset or their Pro Reality headset. So Apple's kind of having iOS 17 and iPadOS 17 features take a back seat. But recently, Mark Gurman did come out saying that actually Apple is working on some more game-changing features as opposed to those little bug fixes that they mentioned earlier. So iOS 17, there should be an expectation to have something new come out with iOS 17, some new features, some new improvements, some new efficiencies, but Apple does a great job of keeping their iOS updates and their software updates under wraps. So we don't really know exactly what Apple's going to be doing. You know, I want more improvements to Stage Manager and extended monitor support. On the iPhone, everything is pretty good for the most part. Like I'm not really missing anything besides maybe a dedicated password manager, something along those lines. But in terms of what to expect with iOS 17, we'll find out during WWDC. But that is going to do it for this video, everybody. If you made it to this point, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And let me know what you think. And maybe leave a comment down below if you're on one of those older iPhones or older iPads. What do you think about Apple cutting support for the iPhone 8, the iPhone 10, the iPhone 2018 iPad Pro, which is one of my favorite products of all time. If Apple didn't create that 2018 iPad, I probably would not be making these videos to this day. But that is going to do it, everybody. Like I said, leave some comments down below and let's discuss. But if you guys want to watch some more iOS, iPadOS, or macOS videos, click on one of these videos right here. And we are going to be coming out with a new iPhone accessory video very soon, which you guys should definitely check out. But that's going to do it, everybody. I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here. Peace.